And I wanted to say happy Memorial Day weekend to everybody. It is a holiday. It is actually the kickoff of the patriotic holiday season. And most people don't think of it as a patriotic holiday season. But Memorial Day, in addition to being the unofficial start of the summer season, is also a day that we honor our soldiers, those who have fallen in battle, fighting to defend or protect this United States of America in which we are living. It was originally started in 1868 to honor Union soldiers. It rapidly expanded to honor Union and Confederate soldiers, and it has been honored since then, or extended since then, to honor everybody, all of the soldiers who have fought for and given, as it's referred to, the last full measure for their country. And it's kind of metaphysical about looking at that situation and saying, this is what I'm taking a stand for. This is worth fighting for. And it brings up the question of what's worth fighting for. We'll talk about that a little bit together. The other patriotic holidays are Flag Day, which most people don't pay a whole lot of attention to, and Independence Day, which is 4th of July weekend, which is the ultimate grilling weekend of the summer. That's where that all starts up, and it really feels like summertime. We have the advantage/disadvantage of Memorial Day weekend being a little bit chilly here in the Philadelphia area, so it's not like we're in the full swing of summer quite yet. Flag Day is on June 14th, and the first Flag Day was in 1777. That was the day that the Continental Congress, the U.S., that we adopted the United States flag. And the law, the declaration was that the flag of the 13 United States be 13 stripes, alternate red and white, that the Union be 13 stars, white in a blue field, representing a new constellation. And that was the specification, that was the definition of the flag of the United States. And we've all seen it, and you might have noticed that it's a little different now than it was then. And that's because it's subject to change. The specification has changed. It's now no longer 13 stars and 13 stripes. It's 13 stripes, but there are 50 stars because things change. And it's important to remember, things change. Sometimes things change for the better. Sometimes we are able to invite in a new experience that we would love to have instead, and let that be the one that we're having. It is also possible to have the experience of looking a fact in the face and saying that this is not me, this is not what I stand for, this is not what I believe in, this is not okay with me, and to take a stand. And we can use these holidays, these reminders of what has happened up until now, that there are people, our fellow countrymen, who have, and women, who have willingly fought and taken a stand for what they believe in to bring about a new experience, which is the one that they are preferring and the one that they are choosing. So it's called a holiday, which is actually a holy day, which means it's a sacred day. And there is something sacred for each of us. And it's really easy to say, nah, it's just an extra day off from work. I don't have to do anything on Monday. I can get the barbecue grill out. I can hang around with friends. I can do these things that I'm doing. My town is pretty empty this weekend because it's the first weekend of everybody going down the shore. And that's okay. There is an experience that we're going to be having. And it's still a holiday. It's still a holy day. And if you've been listening to me for any period of time, you know that that's a sort of a slippery statement, because since there's only God, there's only God's divine love. Everything is sacred, everything is holy, and every day is a holy day. Yeah, you got me. That is correct. That's my thing. And when we're celebrating a holy day, we can be more specific about it. We can be more intentional about it. We can take a moment to be deliberate about what's holy for us, what is sacred for us, what is it that we are choosing to bring into experience. And there's a lot that's been going on in our government. We generally try and avoid talking about politics because mixing religion and politics is never a good idea. And what I do get into is government, and especially the way that we the people, are allowing ourselves to be organized and governed. There's a wonderful article that our friend Robert Brzezinski, New Thought Media Network, and is also now the spiritual leader of the Center for Spiritual Living in Boulder Valley in Colorado. And the piece that he wrote this week is The War on Words, and I'm going to read some excerpts from that. He says, we're standing at the edge of a crisis, not of economy or climate, but of something even more foundational, the right to name, to speak, and to be heard. This is all about the metaphysics of what's going on, it changes in our government. He writes, the recently news service of a disturbing and extensive list of words that have been discouraged or banned from use in federal documents by officials aligned with the administration. This is not conjecture. It includes over 200 terms that relate to identity, inclusion, science, and social equity. The list of words includes diversity, racism, mental health, pregnant people, implicit bias, gender, LGBTQ, accessibility, and climate crisis. They've all been flagged. Even woman and women are on the list of banned words. So what's happened is entire realities and communities have been reduced to silence by bureaucratic decree. And then he makes his big, bold statement. He says, let's be clear, this is not merely a political maneuver, it is a metaphysical assault. And as metaphysicians, we get to take that a little bit seriously. Robert writes, the New Thought has long taught that words are not passive, they are dynamic, they carry frequency, energy, and intention, they shape thought, and thought shapes reality. When we speak of divine mind, we speak of a consciousness that creates through words, or through the word. In every scripture, ancient and modern, it begins with the word. To control words, then, is to attempt to control consciousness itself. So are we buying into that? Are we buying into the thought that somebody else can take away our words and decide which ones are going to be okay and which ones are not going to be okay? Well, that's something that I think is worth taking a stand for. Don't necessarily automatically know what to do, what my action step is in that. But as we have discussed on numerous occasions, the first thing to do is to look a fact in the face and know something better. So this is not our reality. This is simply a fact. This is the experience that we're having right now. And this list of words is real. These things have been taken off and scrubbed off of websites. And there's been all sorts of turmoil that's been going on in this administration in the last 120 days or however long it's been. And that flurry of activity, let's fire lots of government employees because of, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse. By the way, waste, fraud, and abuse is a way that you can claim that whatever was going on before is something that was not good. And it's really hard to defend against that. Is there waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, in the bureaucracy? Yeah, of course there is. Because when you have somebody who's trying to launch rockets into space and they have to run past a bureaucrat who's trying to protect a frog who lives in a particular meadow near where they're going to be launching it, that can seem wasteful. That can seem abusive. That can seem like it's slowing down progress. And maybe it is. And maybe if the place that they are trying to launch the rockets is the next door to your house, and that's going to really inconvenience and trouble you, then maybe it's worth having somebody taking a look at that and saying, yeah, let's find a different way of doing this. So it's a slippery slope, that waste, fraud, and abuse. And taking the words out and claiming that they either don't exist, don't apply, can't be used, or don't mean what they originally meant, can be divisive, can take our power away. There's the big boogeyman now is DEI. And every time something, quote, bad happens, the first response from people in the government is to say, oh, this is about DEI. That's when I'm not blaming the last administration. And we've had this discussion before. When somebody says DEI, let's spell it out. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if somebody is offended by or bothered by or against DEI, and ask them, which one is it? Do you not like diversity? Like the fact that we're not all the same? You're against equity, where everybody gets a fair shot? Do you not like inclusion? Is there something wrong with including everybody and giving everybody a fair chance. I can tell you where I stand. This is the coffee mug that I got from Unity Village, which says unapologetically inclusive. Let's go, baby. And I can take this back to one of the lessons from improv and improv comedy. And we've talked about that before, because in improv comedy, somebody suggests something and you don't object. The person who responds to them says yes and they can completely change the subject after that, but you're not objecting, you're not pushing back, you're saying yes and you're taking it in a different direction. And yes is hugely important. That is affirmative. That is, we are creating something here. It might not be what I had in mind. It might not be what I want to be creating, but there's something being created. And yes and gives us an opportunity to head in a different direction, to create something new and something different. And if we are setting a good intention, something wonderful. And the word and is unapologetically inclusive. There's no but, there's no except, there's an and. Are there people in our society who are completely ill-equipped and unqualified to live in our society? No. No. And we've seen over and over again that when people in the most unlikely of circumstances get a chance, they get a leg up, they create wonderful, wonderful things. I'll even change that. We create wonderful, wonderful things. And oh, by the way, DEI has come to mean anything that's not advantaging white men. And I got to say that as a white man, I don't need that. I don't need that. And as far as I'm concerned, the richness and the uplift that comes from having everybody's voice heard, of all those different possibilities, of the people who are in all of those groups that Robert was talking about, they're adding richness and depth, even if they're not groups that I'm part of. Robert goes on to write that eliminating language is a denial of existence. It erases people from policy, from protection, from personhood. To forbid terms like transgender, intersectionality, oppression, or belonging is to suggest that these lived realities are illegitimate, that the people who embody them are inconvenient, invisible, or expendable. And to me, that's worth taking a stand for. That's where I get to say, nope, that's not the country that I live in. That's not what I'm about. That's not okay with me. And Robert says this is where new thought must rise, not with outrage alone, but with clarity and conviction. We believe in the creative power of language. Our prayers, our words, our affirmations, our words, our vision statements, our sermons, our intentions, they all begin and end with words. If language is sacred, then silence in the face of linguistic suppression is spiritual complacency. Well, okay, Robert's not pulling any punches there. And I had somebody ask me, so what do you do? What is a metaphysician to do in a situation like this? Protest, object, don't play along, don't be spiritually complacent, look a fact in the face and know something better. There have been protests going on every couple of weeks. Usually they happen in Washington, D.C. as the focal point, and they happen other places around the country. Joe and I have gone down to to Independence Mall. I've been there a couple of times to protest no kings and hands off and things like that. And usually Philadelphia is a satellite location. Flag Day, which I mentioned before, June 14th, happens to be a Saturday, which is a very convenient day for protesting. It also happens to be the birthday of the United States Army. So that happens on the same day. And it also happens to be the president's birthday, so he's having himself a big military parade in Washington, D.C. So the idea is, the people who aren't in favor of that, let's not go to Washington, D.C. Let's have the big anchor event of this be in a different city. And the city is going to be Philadelphia. So, you want to make your voice heard? You want to say, this is not okay with me? Then come on down to City Hall. Actually, it's going to be Love Park is where the march is starting. At Love Park, and then it's going to go up the Parkway, and then there's going to be a big rally at the Art Museum. And I hear you say, well, that won't do any good. What good could that possibly do? Well, on the one hand, you might be right, that it wouldn't do any good at all to register your singular voice in protest to whatever it is that's going on. And oh, by the way, if you look up the things that we're protesting, not everybody has to protest the same thing. There's plenty to go around. Even, it's fun just to go down and look at the protest signs and see all of the different things that that people are protesting and the very clever ways that they're saying it. The idea is to claim your voice. To claim your voice and take a stand and be part of the opposition. Say, this is not okay with me. This is not the country that I signed up to be living in. There's a guy named Gene Sharp who wrote a document called 198 Methods of Nonviolent Protest. And you think, well, that sounds pretty heady. Why is it that we're hearing about this for the first time now? Well, it turns out that there are countries all over the world that have been reading his 198 things you can do to protest and using them very, very effectively over the last number of decades. So it's coming into vogue in this country because now there's something there. And I will put a link to that in the chat when we're done. 198 different things that you can do. Some of them are kind of fascinating. Some of them are exactly the things that you would think of. Robert says, let's not be mistaken. When government discourages or censors the use of inclusive, identity-affirming language, they are not neutral. They are taking a side that resists justice, that fears change, and thrives on erasure. And yet we do not meet fear with fear. We meet it with light, with courage, with the unshakable truth that language like spirit cannot be contained. Now, he says, is the time to safeguard the words that carry the frequency of liberation. To speak of equity is not radical, it is responsible. To name racism is not divisive, it is honest. To say pregnant person or trans youth or BIPOC is not performative, it is precise, respectful, and real. To teach about gender identity, accessibility, or mental health is not dangerous, it is necessary. Do you need to agree with everything that everybody wants to include? No, you don't have to agree with it. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to understand it. We simply need to understand that that's a possibility for somebody else and then be unapologetically inclusive. Yes, and this is my world, this is my country, this is my community, and I want everybody to have a chance to live a life of freedom, of love, of peace, of harmony, of prosperity. I can look a fact in the face and know something better. I can look at people who are trying to take a huge amount of money from the most disadvantaged people in the country and give it to the wealthiest people in the country and understand the wealthy people are interested in wealth. And that's perfectly understandable and perfectly natural. And I also know that the wealthy people tend to get wealthy anyway. They have the consciousness of wealth. They don't need to take the money from the people who can't afford it. So we can support our most vulnerable with food and with health care and with assistance and still be wealthy. Yes. And we can do all of it. And we don't do it by being divisive and taking stuff apart and tearing things away from each other. We do it by building up and encouraging and unfolding and allowing and inviting something new. So that is the roundabout invitation today. To be aware, to the extent that your mental, emotional equilibrium can handle it, of what's going on, of what is the world that you want to live in, and where is it that you can take a stand. There might be one of those 198 ways. There might be dozens of ways in the list of 198. There might be one thing. And maybe, just maybe, when you find yourself in contact with somebody who believes something that's different than what you believe in, instead of labeling them as the enemy or the opposition or wrong or dangerous, run towards them with curiosity. What makes you think that? Where'd that idea come from? If we follow that idea along, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for us? Is there a way that we can be in agreement that includes your idea, that also includes my idea? Is there a yes and available for each of us and for all of us. Maybe there is. Maybe there's not. But we get to be the ones who find out. Because, as Jamie Lewis says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Love is at hand. It is your hands right now. These ones that you're carrying on the end of your arms. So move something around. Make something wonderful happen. Be that bright light of divine love that you are. And together we create something spectacular. So it is.